What if the Enclave survived in Fallout 76? Chapter 7, Parabellum. What had he meant by that? We're going to war? With whom? He couldn't mean. Compulsively snapping out of his train of thought by his own curiosity, Harper stands up and moves to exit the war room, now full of people rushing in every direction trying to relay orders back and forth.
General, sir, we need you to coordinate the landing operation.
How long do we have?
First arrival will be 25 minutes.
Then I'll be back in 20. Weaving through the maze of cold hallways that make up the bunker, Harper nears the entrance to General Swarford's office, noticing someone standing outside. Of course, who else would it be but that DIA fuck? Harper continues his approach to the office, and as expected, Agent Grey chirps up in his usual smug, overconfident tone.
Good morning, General. I see you've come to watch my handiwork in person. Oh, and don't worry about being seen here. Everyone else is distracted with that little problem you and General Beck created.
And how exactly would you know about that?
Please, General. It's my business to know things. I must say I admire your ambition. With Swafford gone, I'm sure you'll make quite the leader.
Burying his utter loathing for the man, Harper turns to enter Swarford's office without another word, Agent Grey trailing in behind him. Immediately, Harper notes the office is quite small. Not quite as much as the other rooms, but smaller than he expected. This is going to hurt. The only thing of note in this perfectly plain office for a perfectly plain man is the man himself, lit up by the light source emanating from the desk lamp. It's clear he is now in full dress uniform, and holding a crate of fine wine on the desk. Quickly he inquires, "I suppose you're here to kill me then?" "Seems that way, doesn't it?" "Well, don't worry. I'm leaving." "Leaving?" "Yes, leaving. Reckon I'll find a nice rock to settle down on and watch you assholes end the world a second time." "That would be desertion, sir." "Desertion, retirement. Doesn't really matter anymore, does it? I'm not staying here." Before Harper can continue the patronizing exchange of half-hearted objections, Agent Grey squirms his way in to remind the two generals of his presence, however well it may be hidden by the darkness of the small room.
As much as we'd love to wave goodbye to you, General, we can't leave any loose ends. I'm afraid you won't be leaving.
As the DIA agent reaches under his suit jacket and produces a sidearm, the ear-splitting sound echoes through the bunker as Grey's skull shatters open, bathing the walls in the thick, viscous red of his blood. Watching as the body goes limp and crumbles under the weight of gravity, Harper just looks at him in disgust. Just another worm on the ground. His soft insides now pouring out of his head, pooling on the ground in entrancing satisfaction. "The chain of command will be upheld." "What?" comes the voice of General Swarford from behind the desk, squeezing his ears in agony. Harper pulls himself away from his admirable work to face General Swarford. Putting his sidearm back into its holster, he waits patiently while the general slowly recovers. When the guards eventually arrive, insultingly late, the question then unsurprisingly comes, what happened? Harper, now talking in a serious manner, replies in a near-threatening tone. "He tried to assassinate a superior officer. He failed." The guards look to General Swarford for reassurance. Now clearly able to hear his surroundings, he gives them a simple nod, and when subsequently asked if he requires medical attention, yet again he replies with a minor movement of his head, this time in the form of a no. After a long silence while the guards finish shoving the cadaver into a bag and dragging it out of the room, General Swarford finally opens his mouth, still becoming accustomed to hearing again. "Why?" "Because you still have a job to do, sir." "What is it with you? This whole time I thought you wanted me gone, and now you're practically begging me to stay." "Maybe I don't like you, Swafford, but I respect your authority, and I respect the oath that I took to follow the officers above me. But you're not a grunt anymore. Different rank doesn't make a different man. But what does this have to do with me then? The only reason I'm here is because I followed orders. Every order, without question, without hesitation. I was a dog on a leash, and they could not stop throwing promotions at me. I imagine everyone else is here for similar reasons, because they're easy to control, because they follow orders. But you don't make sense. I don't know why they put you here, because you don't fit in. Now that Beck's gone, you're pretty much the only choice to lead. Lord knows if I tried, I'd only make things worse. I don't understand what your problem is with leading. Surely you've picked up something by now. It's not whether I can lead, it's whether I should. I know what happened in Alaska, but it's not the— No, you don't. How don't I? Alright, tell me what you think happened. It's not what I think happened, it's in your report. You and your men were withdrawing from a hot zone, but then you had to start evacuating civilians as well. Because of this, you didn't manage to get out before the Chinese started bombarding your position, killing all the civilians and a lot of your men. And you believe that's what happened? Well, I don't know. If there's something I missed, please enlighten me. Harper hesitates, thinking carefully whether or not to proceed. He checks his watch. 15 minutes. After a long silence, he eventually spits out, "How old are you, Swafford?" "I'm 48, Harper." "So I'd be right in assuming that you served in Vietnam?" "Yes, you would." "Right, so that was back during the early days of China's expansion. Poor coordination, weak assertion over their soon-to-be satellite states. Our forces decimated the locals, and they were welcomed back as heroes." Does this have a point? Yes, this does explain a lot. So I would also be right in that you didn't serve in Alaska. No, I did not. Why do you care? Because 10 years of fighting an equally equipped army in a frozen wasteland takes its toll on people. If it wasn't the food supplies arriving late or not at all, or the Chinese constantly bombarding our position, it would be some wave of frostbite from the tents falling apart after a decade. No matter how hard I try, I will never be able to forget the icy, piercing hatred of that cold, nor the faces of entire platoons frozen to death in that damn snow. Harper takes another short pause before continuing. But the worst part, well, that would be right at the end. I was a colonel at the time. The Chinese had organized one last push to take Anchorage while our forces were tied up elsewhere. By the time we got there, it became a tug of war over the city. I was put in charge of the evacuation. After we got the first few waves of people out, things started changing. I should have noticed the signs, but I was too focused on trying to save everyone. It started when we went to search for the family of one of my men, a local. It didn't take long for us to find his wife and daughter lying down on the street. They'd been raped and had their throats slit. We barely managed to stop him from pulling the trigger on himself. I thought there was a single murderer on the loose, maybe a gang at most. But as we moved deeper into the city, we saw what was really going on. Stores looted, cars on fire, bodies on the ground. Had the chaos driven them mad, or were they always animals on the inside? I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that we put a lot of them down that day. And that was before the gas. Hold on, there was no gas used in Alaska. Right, that was probably classified. Let's just say Alaska was a good test environment for weapon development. If it had military applications, we tested it on the Reds. So when it looked like the Chinese might actually advance through the city, Command authorized the deployment of an experimental gas. It flooded the streets in seconds, flushing all the rats directly towards us. I realized too late that these people weren't innocent civilians and families. No, those people were already dead or evacuated. The only people left in the city were those that could survive in such a hellhole. Sure, when they got to our first checkpoint, they started going on about how, oh, my family's outside, or that she's pregnant. When my men, God rest their souls, started asking questions, it didn't take very long to get violent. They began trying to push through the line. My men retaliated with warning shots and, well, it wasn't too dissimilar to the events that have just transpired. Some of them were armed, others grabbed the weapons off my men after they were beaten or shot to death. And what could we do about it? Nothing. We didn't have the manpower to stop them. We were an evacuation force. We didn't even have machine guns because no one thought we would come close to the Chinese line. So I'll tell you what I did. The only thing I could do given the circumstance. I called in the artillery strike. I tried to give distance between it and those of us that were left, but I knew to take down the rioters, some of us, I wouldn't make it out. And what can I say? It was peaceful then. Knowing I was going to die, I mean. I saw the artillery flying down, and all I could hear was my heartbeat. Not fast, not loud, just there. It was absolute clarity. Then the heat washed over me, unraveling and tearing apart every fiber of my being, shattering my very soul like glass in the face of a hurricane. Everything I was turned to nothing and nothing more, just darkness. Incidentally, someone had other plans for me. I woke up, the two men next to me now in pieces. My body stood up of its own accord, and I understood my new purpose. Was I thrown out of hell to serve vengeance, or was I sent down from heaven to serve justice? I haven't quite figured that one out yet. What I did know was that some of those rats were still alive. Those bastards even had the gall to beg for mercy. So I made sure that I looked every single one of them in the eyes before I put their lights out. After it was all done, after we kicked the Reds back to China, there were a lot of things that wouldn't look good in the eyes of the public. So we buried it all. The weapons, the torture, the experiments, even what I did. Then they told me I was messed up in the head, that I was unfit for combat. So they shipped me back home, where they could keep an eye on me. Harper, I still don't understand why you need me. Really, after all that. Let alone the fact that I have the experience of a lieutenant colonel. I just can't. Since Alaska, I've been slipping. I've felt it. I know one day I'll make a mistake that I can't come back from. Even now, I can feel it creeping in, nagging at me. I wish I could say that I take no joy in the choices I make, but I do. I enjoy watching my enemies fall, seeing them die at my feet. I'm just the id in the consciousness of this government. My purpose is survival and nothing more. But you, Swafford, you may be the last one here that's still human. Because I can tell you, I would have done everything you did. No, I would have done worse, and I would have done it without a second thought. But I'm hoping that maybe you can help me get back some of what I've lost. So does this mean you'll stop getting in the way of my command? I'll continue to give my advice, but it's up to you to make the final decision. Now come on, we're not out of the frying pan yet. We've got about 5 minutes until the survivors start arriving. We have to prepare for that war of yours after all.
Hello, friends. It's that time of week again when I regrettably have to remind you to stay out of other people's business. This little piggy didn't seem to get the message, so we'll have to teach him a lesson about manners. Please! Oh, don't cry, little piggy. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful view up on that spike. Now hold still.
Chapter 8. The endless night. Harper watches General Swarford, having apparently made his decision, jump to his feet and rush out of the office. Having been caught by surprise at the sudden movement, Harper hurriedly tails after him. Storming back into the war room, the General loudly demands, "Lieutenant, give me a situation report."
1 fixed wing, ETA 4 minutes. 12 birds, ETA 16 minutes, and an unknown number of ground assets. No ETA.
As General Swarford continues to the front of the room, he is interrupted when one of the General's present stands to meet him, blocking his path and inquiring,
"What do you think you're doing? You can't just barge in here after taking a little bathroom break, General. We've been working here for the past 20 minutes. You're only getting in the way."
Seeing the commotion, Harper starts moving in, but General Swarford, as if sensing Harper's approach, just lightly pushes away his opponent and continues to move forward, finally looking back. "So what have you got then?"
Oh, the surviving forces will arrive at Wade Airport, and from there, they will set up operations at the airport.
"No, we need to consolidate our forces before we stretch out again."
So, what? You want them to land here? If you haven't noticed, this isn't an airfield, nor is it something that we can afford to attract attention to.
"Then maybe it's time we stopped hiding in the shadows."
You can't be serious. Monarch, that's enough. Sit down.
Surprised by the call, Harper looks to the other side of the room. It's General Garrett, clearly tired of the useless debacle, probably knowing full well that it would take all of the generals to oppose a command from the highest ranking officer. Partially satisfied with the outcome, Harper sets his gaze on the seemingly defeated monarch, eagerly waiting to see if he'll make another move while General Swarford continues with his seizure of control over the situation. "Modus, set all the outside resort lights to full brightness."
Setting lights to full brightness.
The general quickly turns to face the mass of soldiers behind him. "All of you, go to the armory, grab as many flares, torches, and power armor suits as you can. I want at least 10 of you clearing and lighting up a landing strip on the road outside the resort entrance, and the rest of you lighting up landing zones on the golf course. Lieutenant, can you get me the crew of that bomber on the radio?"
Right away, sir.
"This is General Swarford to the crew of the B-84 High Castle. Do you copy?"
Yes, General, we can hear you. Loud and clear.
"To whom am I speaking?"
Captain Eilich, sir.
"And where are you now, Captain?"
We're approaching the airport now, sir.
"No, Captain. No. Change of plan. I want you to land at the White Spring Resort."
The White Spring Resort? But, sir, there's no runway near there.
"I'm aware, Captain. My troops are clearing a runway on the I-64 as we speak. Hopefully you can see their lights."
All right, we'll head there now.
"They'll need at least 10 minutes to be ready, so adjust your speed accordingly. And also, please relay the message to all other aircraft to land on the illuminated LZs on the resort golf course."
Yes, sir, I'll see they get the message.
"Thank you, Captain. I look forward to meeting you in person." Noticing the sudden silence, Harper removes his eyes from one act to see Swarford staring directly at him. "Harper, I want you to clear the resort of any remaining civilians. Take as many men as you need, but don't kill anyone. And try not to make any more enemies." Harper just replies with a cocky half salute and grin to match, before asking, "Modus, can you unlock all the locks in the resort?"
Yes, General.
And with confirmation, he takes his leave. 5 minutes later, and he stands outside the bunker entrance, breathing in the crisp, bitter cold morning air. Hugged by the familiar tightness of combat armor, he unslings his rifle into his hands, caressing the perfectly intricate and ergonomic grooves of the weapon, before shifting his focus to the 36 lightly armored men behind him. "Alpha Squad, you've got the golf club and the private lodges. Bravo, you take the southeast wing, and Charlie, you're with me. Remember, if you find anyone, bag them, but don't kill them." With a motion of his hand and the movement of his feet, the soldiers all split off in different directions. Racing to make use of the dwindling silence, Harper and his soldiers enter the grand building of the White Spring Resort. Equipped with night vision, the soldiers move quietly through the halls, swiftly but carefully opening every door and moving to the next in a perfect machine-like rhythm. One by one, any remaining survivors are awoken by a bag over the head and a rope around the wrists. But before long, the distinct sound of a plane overhead can be heard. Faint at first, but soon blossoming into a mighty roar, prompting some to exit their rooms in surprise, and some to further cry,
"We're under attack!"
at the sight of emerald-eyed shadows bearing rifles. Reinforcing his previous order, Harper quickly yells out, "Non-lethal only!" As he watches his men disappointedly chase after and tackle the loose prey, what follows is a long string of loud ordering for the last few resort guests to raise their hands as the last rooms are cleared. Once everyone is bagged, tied, and brought into the entrance hall where Bravo is already waiting, having apparently finished before Charlie, Harper awards them with orders to assist Alpha, prompting one of the men behind him to ask the fate of the people huddled on the ground in front of them, only to be met by a response from one of the captives, a woman, pleading. It's definitely hard to hear the words coming through the bag on her head, but he manages to make them out.
Please don't hurt my baby.
Squinting at the woman on the ground, indeed, in her arms she holds a small child. Whether this request had come as a genuine plea for the child's safety, or if it was just a desperate attempt at sympathy, one cannot know. However, the prolonged look at the group only affords Harper further conflict of mind. Turning off his night vision, he activates his torch, shining it over the huddled masses and gaining a proper picture of them for the first time. Washed, clean clothes, pajamas even. Definitely not the type of people that have already turned into animals. Reluctantly, Harper turns around, exiting the building and catching up to Bravo, instead pointing them to retrieve packs of water from the bunker. That's almost certainly what Swarford would do in the same situation, but that's as far as it goes. What little food may remain will stay where it is. We need it more than them, Harper thinks, while returning to the building to lead his soldiers along with their captives out to the golf course. But before he can do this, the radio on his belt starts buzzing and then speaking.
General, do you copy?
Yes, Sergeant. Are you finished?
Almost, sir. We didn't find anyone in the lodges, so we're at the golf club now, and it looks like there's people in there. A lot of them. But the noises they're making, they are definitely not human.
Understood. I'm heading to you now. After gesturing to half of his men to follow him, Harper heads outside with haste, soon coming to the golf course to see Alpha parked a safe distance away from the building. Joining them in their reconnaissance, Harper confirms their story. Human-looking shapes moving around inside, but very inhuman noises and movements coming from the creatures. Harper looks at his watch. Only a few minutes left. Then he speaks, not daring to surpass a whisper.
You three, come with me. The rest of you assume firing positions and be ready to move in on my signal.
Creeping up to the door of the building, Harper looks back to ensure that everyone is still behind him. Opening the door painfully slowly, the foul smell of human waste mixed with the rich iron smell of blood washes out. Desperately trying to ignore it, Harper's eyes scan the room, still eerily dark even through the lenses of his night vision. After they land on one of the human-like shapes, he begins his approach, carefully walking forward over the metaphorical landmines of sound that lie on the floor. The odd shivering of the creature in front of him becomes apparent, and, preparing for a volatile response, Harper slowly lowers his rifle to hang on the sling while drawing his pistol in its place. Now close enough to hear the thing breathe its raspy growl of a breath and make out every detail of its shape, there can be no doubt that it is human, but every part of it is wrong, perverted. The flesh is melted, stretched so much it looks as though it's going to tear. In some places, it appears it has, with big chunks either missing or hanging by threads, exposing vile pus sores. Taking a slow breath and tightening his grip on his pistol, Harper reaches his hand forward, and in an instant shoves the pistol against its back and clasps a tied hand on its shoulder. But before he can whisper to the person to raise their arms, it swings around and lunges at him with staggering force, and Harper feels as time itself slows, where by instinct alone he acts, seeing his hand tighten around his knife and glide from its sheath through the air into the throat of the creature, tearing it open for blood to pour out onto the ground. Harper looks into the red eyes of the deformed creature as it falls to the ground, and then he looks to see the frenzied movement all around him in the dark room. Before his heart can finish its beat, he's already yelling to get out of the building as he turns to follow the men behind him in a sprint to get behind the firing line outside. Only once behind it, yelling at the top of his lungs to fire, does the line of rifles begin its volley, shredding the horde of zombies. Yet still the horde advances as each wretch that falls is replaced by another, the massive corpses making it closer and closer to the soldiers with each death. The gunfire does not stop for an entire minute of the dead rushing at the soldiers, getting so close their misshapen yellow teeth can be made out. But eventually, the gunfire stops, as the last of the creatures draws its final tortured breath. Harper breathes a heavy sigh of relief. Finally remembering his previous mission and receiving confirmation that Alpha can handle any stragglers, he radios for the rest of Charlie to meet him at the impromptu landing pads. Once standing on the golf course, he is just able to make out the outline of a large plane on the road by now having turned off its engines, but is quickly distracted by the arrival of Charlie with their captives, and soon after the arrival of Bravo and a contingent of medics and other personnel. Before he can begin to pick apart the role that everyone was sent here for, the sound of engines starts picking up again, starting out as a whisper but soon overpowering the wind and finally showing itself as a fleet of heavy mechanical birds, swooping gently onto the warm light projected over the open grass of the resort. Immediately, people begin swarming out of the birds, with the people already there swarming out to meet them. But all Harper focuses on is finding the nearest bird, and asking the clearly already incredibly tired pilots to fly one more time. And after loading the mass of blind, bound people along with the water onto the machine, Harper points to a location on the pilot's map, just out of Charleston. Satisfied, he moves back and watches the bird take off from their new base.
Hey, Rex. Know how I said I saw a chopper last week? Well, you're not gonna believe this shit, man. I just saw a whole swarm of them at that rich person resort. It's the fucking army, man. They're still kicking.
Chapter 9. What Used to Be. 7, 14, 21. 7, 14, 21. 7, 14, 21.
You really think that's the best idea?
Swarford breaks his gaze from the ceremony to see Harper behind him. If you're going to say the noise might give away our position...
No, I mean focusing on the people we've lost. We need to set our eyes on the future, and by proxy, set our eyes on a goal. Remembering what used to be is not something we can afford anymore.
You may only see this as a ceremony for the men that died on their way here, but it's more than that. It's to honor everyone that we've lost. Moreover, it's a promise. A promise that no matter what battlefield you die on, in what war, you will be remembered, and your legacy will carry on, etched into the very skin of the finest army the world's ever seen. That is what those guns mean. It's regrettable that I would have abandoned it so quickly. I see your point, but sometimes you have to look back to remind yourself where you came from.
If you stare for too long, then you'll lose sight of what's ahead of you.
Then don't stare for too long. Anyway, was there anything else you needed?
Actually, yes, sir. Have you heard any news from any of the other installations?
No, I haven't, but as I understand it, they will contact us when they are ready.
But it's been months. Surely they have orders for us.
To be honest, Harper, I wouldn't be surprised if they've forgotten about us already. From what little I know of the other installations, we're the ones who have to do all the hard work. So until we receive orders otherwise, we continue digging in and reclaiming the country inch by inch. But it just so happens I have a solution to speed this process up. Come, I'll show you. The generals begin to walk to the underground command center. Now currently I'm only focused on ensuring we have enough food. So I've started supply runs, with food being at the top of the list. We'll also be getting rations from Silo Alpha soon. That should give us enough time to grow more food ourselves. Or, God forbid, we'll have to ask Site J for whatever it is they eat. But something I'm sure that I can rely on you for is security. Given the disaster at Camp Dawson, and even the creatures you encountered just this morning, it's safe to say things are worse than we feared. So what can you say about our level of security?
It's good, but it can always be better. The robot security, for one thing, needs to be under our command.
Seems I'm already ahead of you. I expect by the end of the day, every piece of technology in this place will be connected to Modus's network.
But not everything here can be connected to Modus. The outer walls will still need to be fortified with barbed wire along their entirety, as well as, let's say, spikes.
Spikes? I suppose that is necessary now. Anything else to add to the shopping list?
If you're offering, we could use floodlights and gates at the entrances, Also some watchtowers on top of the main building, and it would be nice to get some higher ground. I think lookouts on the mountain will do.
Alright. What I'm about to show you will have other purposes aside from fixing our food problem. One of which will be constructing new facilities here. Floodlights and barbed wire I'm sure we can scavenge, and Modus can make what we can't. But watchtowers and all that, well, they'll have to wait.
We can manage a proper defense, or rather offense, without them. But that's another matter.
I don't like where this is going.
You may not like it, but it's true. The history of this country is that of an observer that stood by and watched as our enemies grew fat off the conquest of the globe. Germany, Japan, Russia, China. Time and time again, we let our enemies move against us. Only when the gun was pointed at our head could we see it was time to step in. And look where that got us. Imagine if we stopped World War II before it started, or prevented Russia from turning Eastern Europe red. Imagine if we crushed China before they destroyed the world. We were the protectors of peace and liberty. We were the shield that protected and policed the world, and this hell that's befallen our nation, it's indicative of our failure to stop the enemies of man.
Be careful where you tread, Harper. A shield can look an awful lot like a curtain to those underneath it.
I'm not asking much, Swafford. I just won't stand by and wait while those that seek out our destruction move against us. Those people at the radio station, the top of the world, they spent a lot of their ammo trying to kill our men. And maybe they won't move against us here. Maybe we'll be fine. But don't forget our armored forces are at the power plant. Eventually we're going to have to go north again. And what then? But if we deal with them now, if we wipe out every last one of them, then we'll be that much closer to peace and safety.
Actually, I have an idea how we can avoid more bloodshed. As the generals finally reach the war room, Swafford strides up to the map of the region, broad grin on his face, and calmly puts his finger on the tiny speck, the location of which required most of the hours of the morning.
A radio station?
One of the very last radio stations, Swafford announces proudly, satisfied with his tireless research. There's only a handful of stations left, and this one broadcasts over the entire state. The value of this cannot be understated. Firstly, and this is how we avoid bloodshed, we announce ourselves to everyone. We tell them that their government, their military is still here, and that we will still enforce the law. If anyone still seeks to defy us after this, then they are free rein for anyone to deal with as they see fit. We might not even have to take direct action. We can offer bounties. No one will be able to stop us. Secondly, we use it to recruit people with necessary skills. Not only can we find more soldiers, but we can find farmers, doctors, engineers, anyone we need. And finally, we give people hope. All the other emergency broadcast systems are gone, so we use this one to help people. We tell them how to survive, what to avoid. We tell them how each day we're rebuilding, we are getting stronger. All we need to do is set up an outpost at the radio station and a place where we can collect our new recruits.
I'll prepare an occupation force right away, if there's nothing else.
Oh, yes, actually there is, he says after setting his gaze on the holotape he recorded hours prior. Handing it to Harper, he quickly explains, "This has all the information on it. Just set it to repeat, and that'll be good enough for now. And the last thing, I want you to put some men at the station just outside of Charleston. That'll be our receiving point for anyone looking to work for us."
But that station wouldn't be on our line, sir. We couldn't reach it by rail from here.
Yes, that is unfortunate, but the station is otherwise perfect for our requirements. I reckon we can salvage some of the resort buses, or just use the birds to move people.
Understood, sir. I'll see that everything is completed by the end of the day.
Swafford salutes the man and watches as he leaves to once again push himself to the front line of the war they've found themselves in. And now Swafford has the much less exciting but equally important job of managing resources and writing requisition lists. Logistics win wars and all that. Harper could devise the most effective campaign against their enemies, but without food, fuel, and ammunition to support it, it's nothing but drawings on a map. So after a deep cup of coffee, Swarford gets to work, analysing every detail of the satellite imagery, cross-referencing phone books, directories, anything available to paint a picture of what can be used. Even with the help of the communications officers, it will still take all day. But Swarford shrugs off the still encroaching fatigue and continues studying the various pieces of information, starting the soon-to-be official list for scavenging while the others continue to decipher the map into addresses. Obviously food needs to be at the top. What else? Barbed wire, metal sheets, bolts, hell, just the entire hardware store. Gun stores, robotic stores. Better take note of the factories too. Soon Swarford has a full list of required materials with a slowly growing list of addresses to accompany it. So enthralled in his work, seeing the odds of not only survival but victory increase as the pieces all fall into place. He almost misses the inevitable signal from the radio man indicating Harper's mission to be complete. But there's only one way to be sure. Swarford reaches for the nearest radio and sets it to the frequency of what should now formally be Appalachia Radio, and he hears it. The same thing that people all over the state must be hearing at this very moment. Not just his own voice through the radio, but a new beginning.
By order of the United States government, martial law is now in effect. Hostility towards military or law enforcement personnel will be met with deadly force. If you do not have anywhere to go, seek shelter in populated areas. If you believe you have knowledge or skills that can be utilized currently, talk to the soldiers at Charleston Station. If you do not, stay in a safe area and follow instructions given by your local government and law enforcement.
Chapter 10. Hostile Takeover. Swarford looks into the distance of the wide open sky, now turning amber with the setting of the sun, and can just barely make out the tiny dot on the horizon. Turning to Captain Jackson, now just coming to a stop behind him on the grass, Swarford amusedly inquires, "Ready to play babysitter, Captain?"
"If the situation requires it, sir."
The captain replies, barely trying to hide his ill temper at the assignment. "That's the spirit. Now remember, only the ones with agricultural experience."
"I'll remember, sir."
"Good. And did Lieutenant Ward finish with the buses?"
"Yes, sir. They're all ready for use."
"You remember to scrape off the White Spring logo as well?"
"Of course, sir."
"Seems everything's coming along nicely then," Swarford says, affording himself a hopeful smile. Finally, as the dark mechanical beast leaves its place in the sea of amber to contrast itself upon the soft natural grass of the former golf course, its engines calm and its passengers depart, Harper among them. Walking towards Harper, Swarford greets the man with a firm congratulatory handshake followed by the query, "So, what's our catch looking like today?" Harper meets the question in his normal calm tone, with a hint of disappointment hidden beneath it. "Well, I have a doctor, a construction manager, 2 soldiers, and no farmers, but a farm hand, and the last woman said she did a lot of work with irrigation. Frankly, I think we'll have to wait longer. Most people must think it's an old broadcast. No matter. Jackson has orders to get those last 2 to start work on the farm in the morning. There's also something else we have to worry about in the morning. The secretaries seem to have become accustomed to not having to do anything. They're politicians. Being useless is what they do best. Yeah. Anyway, I did manage to squeeze some information out of them. And I don't like it. Not only is there an incredible amount of facilities in this area that were built specifically for surviving a nuclear war, but we were told next to nothing about them. There's always a reason. Maybe so. I'll look forward to asking our dear president what that reason is during our next catch-up, if there even is one. But until then, we might as well make use of what we've got. We'll go over the facilities in the morning." By the time Swarford makes it to the war room the following morning, he comes in to see that the entirety of the senior officers are waiting for him. Have been waiting for him for a while, it looks. Before anyone else can get a word in, Swarford quickly starts. "For anyone that is unaware, I've been chatting with the secretaries, and they gave me a lot of information about facilities that were previously unknown to us. I've taken the liberty of marking them all down on the maps, so any of you feel free to study them as you please. To be honest, I'm not even sure the purpose of most of them. However, I did have a lengthy discussion with the Secretary of the Treasury. Apparently, once we have gained a deep enough foothold, he is to activate a secret vault containing America's gold reserve for the sole purpose of restarting the economy. Now, I don't know why we were not told about this, but if it does turn out to be true, this may be instrumental in our rebuilding of this country. As our scouts have reported, there is a trend catching on out there. If you would believe it, people are beginning to use bottle caps as a currency. Guns can only get us so far, gentlemen. Whoever controls the currency controls everything. We have to establish a trade that we control immediately and stamp out any opposition. I will take the Secretary and a platoon to the vault myself. While I'm gone, General Garrett will assume command. The officers all showed different levels of support, but support nonetheless. Satisfied that there won't be any pushback from within his own ranks at least, Swarford gestures Harper to come over by the map. Once away from the others, Swarford begins laying out his plans to the man beside him. If all goes well today, I won't need you, but I know better than to expect such luck. Transporting vast quantities of gold is no small feat, especially in what, for all intents and purposes, is hostile territory, but I do have a solution. Contrary to what you might believe, the boys at the train yard haven't been sitting on their asses for the past few months. After that ordeal with the silos, I decided to have them work on the trains. Nothing too fancy, just a little extra protection. Actually, to be honest, it's absolute junk. But it's enough to stop small arms. So long story short, I know you've been looking for an excuse, and I'm giving you one. You know where that train line goes past.
The top of the world.
Exactly. They make one move and you burn down the whole place. The Muldoon is already in fire position directly above it.
Sir, the Kovac Muldoon is a tactical weapon. They'll scatter before we can do enough damage.
Yes, I know. You'll need more firepower to wipe them all out. Take a bird to the power plant, but avoid the radio station on the way. After we lost Dawson, I had the heavier armor directed there. You can take half the armor at the plant for the attack, and bring it here once you're done. Trouble is, you'll have to go the long way. Up north past that giant temple, the meditation place. Then switch to the I-63 and there's a gas station there. Make sure to load up on coolant. Then if you head south, you'll pass right by the top of the world. If you hear my signal, light up the building. If you don't, keep driving.
Understood.
And before you go, I'll need your help with one more thing.
What sort of help?
Well, I didn't exactly manage to convince the Secretary of the Treasury to come with us. But I think with your brashness, you might be able to do a better job of convincing him. Swarford leads his colleague through the halls of the facility, up out of the bottom level to the recreational area where the politicians have been spending the past few weeks. Immediately upon sighting the two generals, the expressions of everyone in the room stiffen. As everyone else seems to not want to open their mouths, Swarford breaks the silence, addressing the Secretary of the Treasury directly. Mr. Secretary, I have to once again request that you accompany us to the vault.
It's not my responsibility to leave this bunker and go into that hellhole. You're the big, strong military men. Handle it on your own.
The Secretary snaps back. Disappointed, Swarford looks over to Harper, to see him very slowly and very clearly for everyone to see, place his hand on his holstered pistol and walk forwards towards the Secretary.
That would be a refusal of a direct order, Mr. Secretary. Now you know what the punishment for that will be. Exile. Out into that hellhole, as you so wonderfully put it, where you might survive a night or two before you're killed by mutants, screaming your lungs out until they begin to fill with your own blood as your flesh is sliced into and ripped off your bones. Or maybe you'll encounter some friendly cannibals that'll have their way with you before cooking you alive. I'm sure they'll love such a plump, well-fed swine like yourself. Or I could just save the trouble and put a bullet in your skull right now.
I knew you toy soldiers would try to take over. I just imagined it would take longer. You are beholden to us. We are the rightful holders of power.
The secretary says through gritted teeth and clenched fists to match.
No, actually, because we didn't take control, we were given it. I don't take orders from you. Not even you hold any power over me anymore.
Harper says, pointing to the Secretary of Defense.
I take orders from the President of the United States. And until he says otherwise, this is a military matter and we are in command. So what's your decision, Mr. Secretary?
If it's the only way for my life to be spared, then I'll follow you barbarians. For now.
Satisfied with the response, Swarford re-enters the conversation. Excellent. I expect there is some sort of communication you'll need to send. I'll leave that to you. The General beckons Harper to follow him before leaving the room.
Do you think the Secretary might actually be right about us having too much power?
Don't listen to them, Harper. You said it yourself. They can't be trusted. Not to keep their word, not to run a country.
That's not what I said.
No, but it's what you meant. Now go do your job, soldier. Swarford then exchanges salutes with Harper and watches as he leaves before himself navigating his way to the barracks. There can be no room for error at this point. As the possibilities of what could go wrong race through the General's mind, he finds himself choosing almost exclusively experienced power armor operators out of the selection of soldiers, and merely minutes later finds himself stepping into his own suit of Exo-1 power armor alongside his men. Amazingly, the operation of the suit feels almost identical to the old T-45 units he trained with what now feels like decades ago. After becoming accustomed to the assisted movement once again, he reaches to pick up his rifle, a set of body armor, and helmet to match, acutely aware that anything more than a light hold on the objects will crush them into pieces. Equipment in hand, Swarford leads his men out of the armory down into the war room to see the Secretary of the Treasury standing near the doorway.
Is everything ready for our arrival?
Yes, I've sent the signal.
Swarford hands the nervous-looking man the body armor and helmet, to which he inquires, offended.
This is it? This is all I have to protect me while you're encased in solid metal?
If anything happens, we'll be the ones rushing out to take bullets, not you. Besides, you wouldn't be able to operate one anyway. Now get moving.
Swarford replies impatiently, proceeding to direct his men with the Secretary trailing along, up to the makeshift garage amounting to tarps pulled over the vehicles out of the front of the resort. Getting the men into the vehicles becomes the first problem of the journey. They said 3 flat cars, so an IFV and 4-wheel apiece. After a long time taken fitting everyone in, the 6 vehicles, along with their overloaded passengers, depart from the base. 4 minutes later and the convoy is rolling up on the train yard, now significantly different from the mess of train carriages and rubble that had been annexed weeks prior. Now a clean and organised rail yard, the centrepiece of which being the hulking behemoth of welded and bolted metal in the form of a long, heavily armoured train. The soldiers waste no time dismounting their cramped transportation to watch the careful procedure of the vehicles being loaded up the fragile ramps onto the flat cars. Swarford opens his combat display and looks at the clock. 10:30. He calmly tells his men to stand by for orders and begins to count the minutes, drifting deeper and deeper into thought, dwelling on the worst possible scenarios, until he inevitably reaches the question, what will he do if a fight does ensue? One that can't be easily escaped from. Will he be up to the task, to look another person in the eyes and pull the trigger, to kill? Although he doubted Harper's assertion at the time, perhaps he's right. All that time in Vietnam, and what did he accomplish? Nothing. He sat far behind the front lines and moved tiny wooden triangles on maps. Before he can spiral any more, the sound of his radio snaps him back to reality and Harper's voice comes through it, confirming his readiness. Swarford looks at his clock again. 1500. About damn time. The General stands up from his trance and orders his soldiers and the Secretary onto the train. Loading up himself as the train begins to move, he takes the lookout position, reasoning that he'll avoid drifting off again with a heightened sense of danger. The time ticks by impossibly slowly as the tension builds with each sleeper. What should be a matter of minutes before they pass the radio station draws itself out, relishing in the uneasy air of the calm before the storm. Finally, the station comes into view. It's quite a magnificent sight, especially the way it shines. But the longer Swarford stares at the structure transfixed on its imposing nature on the skyline, he begins to feel something's off. The reflection is mostly uniform in correlation to the sun's rays, but there's one single spot. One spot that doesn't match up, far removed from the other reflections. Zooming his optics in on the rogue reflection, the shape begins to form behind the blinding light. A person. No. A sniper. Swarford breaks his stare from the sniper and looks to his right, seeing a large angled barricade on the tracks, shouting the words,
"Stop the train!"
At the top of his lungs, he dives into the front car after the driver, and the bullets begin to fly. An ambush, one he, along with everyone else on the train, is currently trapped in.
It's worse than we thought, Melody. Chief Mayfield's talking about opening up contact with the military. Seems like most of the officers down in Charleston agree with him, too. We've done fine without soldiers in our streets. Maybe it's time we got rid of the wannabe soldiers, too.
Chapter 11. The top of the world falls on you. Harper looks through his zoom optics over at the radio station, crouching down on top of the tank to steady his view. Trigger finger itching, he looks down at the P-96 heavy plasma caster in his ironclad arms, checking the safety for what must be the 10th time now, counting each second of suspicious silence. The trees help obscure the tanks from view, but they don't completely hide them from anyone with a sharp eye or a high caliber bullet. Perhaps they don't have any lookouts. Perhaps the train will pass by before they even know what's transpiring. It'd be a shame for lack of awareness to be confused for lack of hostility. Just when Harper begins to relax his grip, it starts. The sound of gunfire echoes through the mountains, permeating Harper's ears, and he finds himself moving his hand to answer the radio before it even begins to crackle, soon followed by the voice of General Swarford shouting over hails of fire.
Harper, do you copy?
I copy, sir.
I am giving you execute authority to wipe them out.
Understood, sir.
Harper turns to the convoy of tanks behind him, yelling,
Move it, double time.
quickly finding a place to hang on as his own tank begins to roll its heavy treads forward, rumbling beneath him. While the convoy races closer to the gunfire, an explosion ripples through the air, followed by the sight of the train speeding off in the opposite direction to them. Relief washes over Harper, but the feeling is soon drowned out as he readies himself for the task ahead of him. Once in clear view of the radio tower and the accompanying resort sitting high above the road, the convoy of tanks grinds to a halt one by one and spreads out into firing position.
White Spring Command, come in.
This is White Spring Command. Waiting orders.
Fire.
Harper gives the command for the power-armoured soldiers to dismount from the battle tanks, and as he himself jumps down onto the ground in his T-51B powered combat armour, the memories of a time gone by echo through his mind, before fire rains from the sky, like the hand of God come down from heaven to strike the unworthy, accompanied by the angelic symphony of the 140mm guns firing. Looking around, Harper signals half of the power-armoured soldiers to press forwards with him, while the strikes fall down onto the landscape behind the targets, setting it ablaze and blocking any chance of escape. Making their way forward to the train station car park as the tank shells fly over them, the soldiers sweep their surroundings and hurriedly proceed up the stairs into the station itself. Upon entering the building, the men split off to clear every corner, while Harper can only stand staring outside at a shimmer on the ground. Walking outside to look down at the shimmer, yes, it is. A fallen Crusader, one of Swarford's no doubt, still encased in Exo-1 power armor, a knife in his neck, surrounded by bodies of the bandits that no doubt caused this. But also, footprints, blood red. Tracing them with his eyes, they lead around the corner. Harper tightens the vice grip on his weapon, creeping up to the corner, slowly, carefully, and swinging around it in a split second to see two men, burned and bloody, pressed up against the wall hiding. One of them tries to draw his weapon while the other attempts to escape, Having the advantage of an already drawn weapon, Harper thrusts his weapon forward, plunging the tri-spikes at the end of the barrel into the stomach of the first man. Lifting the man up into the air, he begins to slide down the blades, polluting the air with tortured screams that are swiftly ended when Harper pulls the trigger, shooting burning hot plasma out of the barrel already submerged in the man's entrails. When faced with the plasma, life surrenders from his body as the stomach begins to melt into goo, bubbling and crackling until finally the body falls into two pieces, collapsing onto the concrete floor, but not before showering it in burnt, tar-like blood. Harper inspects his heavy plasma caster. Minor scorching on the blades, otherwise all good. He turns his attention to the other man trying to run through the car park, and takes aim, but a volley of plasma fire beats him to it, and the would-be escapee is turned to nothing more than a puddle of goo, trickling down into a nearby drain. And then, crying. Harper turns around to see someone hunched over the top of the fresh corpse, weeping. Lifting her head, the young woman stares up at the faceless suit of armor and pulls out a knife, the very same knife that was in that soldier's neck. A scream of hatred escapes her tear-drenched face as she lunges forward with the knife pointed towards Harper's neck. Her movement is fast, but not fast enough, as the power-armored hand swings against hers, knocking the knife clean out and breaking her arm backwards. While the realization of injury sets in, Harper grabs her skull with his hand. Upon closer inspection, it becomes clear this woman was hiding among the bodies. The only part of her not drenched in blood is the golden cross hanging from her neck, but her eyes tell the most interesting story. In all the infinite, imperceivable expanse of the soul that projects itself through, there is no innocence left. Not a shred. Just hatred and anguish. Tired of looking into the reflection, Harper begins tightening his armored fingers on her skull, acutely aware that even the slightest increase in force could give an undeservingly merciful death. But he ignores every urge to clench his fist shut, watching carefully as his hand closes steadily around the skull as the bone begins to crack and the eyeballs protrude out. All the while, unimpactful blows are desperately stricken from the one unbroken arm. And eventually the resolve of the skull walls falters, and they cave in, shooting the eyeballs out of their sockets to make space for the brain to ooze out. Harper rips the cross off the neck and throws the empty shell to the concrete floor, watching as the angry red blood trickles over the edge of the station to pervert the soil below. Setting his eyes on the fallen soldier, he walks to the armor and places the cross in its hand, closing the fingers around it, and steps away from the body courteously, slowly pulling his weapon back up to the ready position, when a voice cries, "Rocket!" Harper swings around to see one of his men firing a plasma rifle upwards. Tracking the shot all the way up, he makes out a man staggering from a plasma burn, holding something on fire before ringing, gunfire, blood, snow? No. Alaska. Major Harper looks up the icy slope to see a row of Chinese firing rockets out of their crumbling base. Raising his gun to the fire position, he begins laying down relentless fire on the Chinese, burning through their numbers and their flesh. He is quickly distracted by a voice from behind.
General, we have to get to cover.
Turning around, he sees another soldier in T-51 firing upwards at the Chinese.
Riley?
No, Riley's dead. But who? Before getting an answer, he is pulled back multiple feet in the blink of an eye, seeing the outside roof of the train station collapse. That's right, the train station. He's in the train station. After affirming his surroundings, Harper quickly orders the soldiers in the train station to move outside and return fire. Once outside, they're met with the sight of the buildings beginning to collapse at the onslaught of tank fire. Finally, the hulking radio station begins to give way under the concentrated fire, and with a loud creaking of metal, the base of the tower gives way and the building collapses to the ground, creating a shockwave and a cloud of dust that envelops the entire area, forcing the tanks to halt their fire and the soldiers to push forward into the sea of haze. Moving up the hill through the dust, the soldiers see shapes moving around in the cloud, many of them heading for the tree line, no doubt trying to escape the carnage. Harper raises his weapon in unison with the row of guns behind him. He begins throwing burning hot plasma at anything moving. Trigger pull after trigger pull, they burn, scream, fall. Only after everything in sight is reduced to puddles do the guns stop. As the dust begins to clear, the remainder of survivors, injured and dying, are visible. Some reach for their guns with bloody hands but are indiscriminately put down. As the guns finally fall silent, Harper looks around at the damage. 3 tanks hit, possibly even a mobile. The only thing on his mind is where. Where the hell did they get rockets? And his question is regrettably answered. On examination of the weapons in the ruins of the ski resort, there can be no mistaking where they came from. Camp Dawson.
Uncut the chains, no more. What will even remain? Time to hunt, time to kill, time to free them all. I must find higher ground.
Chapter 12. Vault 79. Swarford just barely makes out the words.
Understood, sir.
Over the thunder of bullets now pounding against the walls of the train. The cavalry is on its way, but will we last that long, Swarford thinks. And then he thinks of an incredibly stupid idea. Looking around the train car, he finds him.
Specialist Hawk!
He shouts, walking over to the man.
Yes, sir?
Are your charges armed?
Yes, sir, they are.
Give them to me!
For what reason, sir?
I'm gonna blow the barricade. You'll be able to break through the rubble if you take it slow.
Swarford says, directing his explanation to the entire car of soldiers.
It sounds like you don't plan on coming back, sir.
There's always risk, Specialist.
Then I'm sorry, sir. We can't let you. It's not your job to die for your country.
The rest of the soldiers all show their agreement with the statement.
Besides, you wouldn't know how to use the charges anyway.
Defeated, Swarford annoyedly replies.
Just come back alive, soldier.
The specialist gives an affirming nod while Swarford opens the door of the armoured car, allowing Hawk to jump down to the ground while the rest of the soldiers provide covering fire on the unseen enemies. As Swarford stands there firing purposefully into nothing, he feels himself counting second after second as they sit there immobilized. And when finally having worked up the mental courage to run out and check on the specialist, his voice comes over the radio.
Charges in!
And the heavy breathing of running makes its way through the radio before
detonating.
Swarford hears an ear-splitting explosion shake the surroundings and silence the gunfire. Taking advantage of the disorientation caused by the blast, he leaps out of the car and mantles into the cab, pushing what looks like an accelerator forward, with the sudden movement of the train confirming the suspicion. He opens his radio once again to signal the specialist.
Specialist, we're leaving!
No response. The silence, however, is quickly broken by the shattering of glass and a punch in the shoulder so hard it knocks him to the ground. The sniper. More shots impact against the walls of the cab, bending and warping the metal. Swarford returns to the radio with more haste as the train starts wading through the rubble of the barricade.
Specialist Hawk, we need to go now!
This time he receives a response, in the form of Hawk's minigun spewing out its supersonic lead, and other guns soon joining in the conversation, but the formal response over the radio soon follows.
I'm afraid I'm a bit pinned down here, sir. Go on without me.
I'm not leaving a man behind, Specialist!
General Harper will be here soon, sir. Don't worry. I'll be fine.
Once again defeated by the specialist's stubbornness, Swarford pushes the accelerator to full as he watches the station quickly disappear behind him, and he turns his head forward, once again setting his attention on the main goal. The trip to the end of the line is short and quiet, but still not reason enough to relax. The soldiers waste no time dismounting and unloading their vehicles. Half the unit remains with the train, freeing up space in the convoy now following the road travelled only hours beforehand by General Harper. A simple task for off-road vehicles. The road remains in fair enough condition and a path has already been smashed through the abandoned cars. Though the next part of the journey does not prove as easy. Breaking from the road past the munitions factory, its stores empty but its presence looming over the finitely supplied soldiers, they trade the asphalt roads for miles of uneven dirt and jagged mountain rock, testing even the resolve of the all-terrain war machines. And soon the perseverance is rewarded. A mountain, with a staircase leading to a cave no less, reveals itself as the convoy enters a clearing. The soldiers dismount and silently sweep their surroundings for any trace of movement, any shadow out of place. But nothing. Trees and more trees in every direction. Swarford signals the secretary to leave the cover of the IFV and leads him along with most of the soldiers up the stairs into the cave. Once in the cave, it's clear that it is not the actual entrance to the vault. It's only a small cave with a single elevator, keypad locked. The group of soldiers watch the secretary carefully as he slowly walks up to the keypad, pulls out a piece of paper, and begins pressing the buttons. And the elevator opens with no argument, inviting everyone inside. After sending the first two down, receiving all clear, and sending the rest down, Swarford drags the secretary into the elevator with him. As the elevator doors open on the other side, the two walk out to see a massive cavern resembling a construction site. Its far wall made of concrete with a large metal door bearing the number 79. The only problem, there's no one in sight. Surely they're expected. Unless... Swarford turns angrily to the secretary.
Where is everyone?
I don't know. They should be here. I sent the signal.
Cursing, he turns away from the secretary and looks around the room. Maybe there's a terminal that can contact the inside. There, a prefab construction office. He begins walking down to it, taking notice of the eerie silence, making it a further 10 steps towards the building before something lands near his feet and all around the room simultaneously. He looks down, alarmed. Some sort of metal cylinder. It almost looks like... And then everything disappears. Blinding white light and sharp ringing ravage his senses. He can feel himself fall to the ground hard in his heavy armor. The surroundings begin coming back slowly. The dark cavern, hulking grey outlines. Other, smaller ones. His men. Wait. No, not his men. Someone else. A lot of them. Well coordinated, their stances and steadiness radiating proper training. All wearing strange combat or power armor. The barrels of their guns pointed at Swarford's men. Slowly the ringing retreats from its assault and words begin to shine through. I defy your soul. No, that's not right. I don't lie yourself. No.
Identify yourself!
The voice repeats impatiently. Swarford raises his head to see a gun barrel inches from his visor, one big enough to punch through it no less. But what's more interesting is the man holding it, the one giving the command through his bulky power armor, most likely the leader of their attackers.
Identify yourself or we will open fire!
The voice repeats, now pushing the weapon even closer to Swarford's face, practically touching his left visor. Swarford stands defiantly to meet the interrogator and announces in the most proper way he can.
Lieutenant General Alex Swarford, United States Army. That man over there is the Secretary of the Treasury.
He says, pointing to the secretary still lying on the ground, holding his ears.
We're here to collect gold bullion from Vault 79.
The interrogator gestures to his men to pick up the secretary. After looking at the secretary and returning a simple nod to their commander, his demeanor immediately changes, lowering his weapon and signaling the rest of his men to follow. He takes off his helmet and hurries to explain himself.
I'm terribly sorry, sir. We didn't expect you to come so heavily armed, especially in equipment that, well, we've never seen before. I hope you understand that we have to be cautious.
Swarford meets the man with the same courtesy and takes off his helmet to address him face to face. I could say the same about your equipment. It is an unfortunate fact that even power armor may now be in the hands of criminals and dissenters. But yes, I understand that the gold must be protected by you and your...
Oh, my apologies. I still haven't introduced myself. Agent Derek Garrison, Secret Service.
He shakes Swarford's hand enthusiastically.
I'm the agent in charge here. I'll take you to the gold vault.
The soldiers all pick up their weapons and follow the agent to the door. With a familiar grind, it opens up and welcomes them. As the large group proceeds into the bowels of the vault, Swarford can't help but be amazed at the scenery. None of the useless ornate furniture and claustrophobic halls of the White Spring, but wide open rooms all built with purpose, and many more Secret Service agents going about their day within them. Unbelievable how something just as important, powerful, useful as the White Spring bunker is so relatively close to it, and remained completely hidden to almost everyone for so long. While walking through the facility for what seems like tens of minutes, Swarford notices Agent Garrison continually edging closer to him, before finally talking in a lowered voice so as to avoid being heard by the rest of the group.
If I may ask, How will the gold be transported once it leaves?
By train, armored of course. And before you ask where it's going, it's not leaving the state.
Then perhaps we can help each other out, General.
What are you proposing?
Well, it's my men. They're a bit on edge. There's even some whispers of mutiny.
Swarford turns to look at him fully, and in response he quickly changes his tone.
They're good agents, but it's the isolation. It's getting to them. I'm sure when they hear that the government is still out there, that we're still serving a purpose, it will heighten morale. But I would like to ask if you could take some of them with you, to have on guard duty for the bullion.
I understand your concern. Morale is a problem plaguing us all these days. I'll see to it that your request is fulfilled, but I'm going to have to ask for more in return.
Of course, whatever you need.
Right. Firstly, I want full rations for however many agents I take, plus extra. Don't worry about water. I also want one of every piece of equipment in your armory. Those are my terms.
That shouldn't be any problem at all, General.
Excellent. After walking through a plethora of security systems, doors, and lasers, the group finally reaches the end. A command center peering out into a massive open structure, so large every direction but upwards fades into darkness. Titanic pillars filled with gold bricks populating its expanse, and Swarford feels the words, "Holy shit," quietly pass his lips, as he stands staring blankly at the pillars that hold their future, until the words from Agent Garrison break him out of the trance.
How much gold are you gentlemen planning on withdrawing?
Understandably out of his depth, Swarford turns to the secretary expectantly.
We'll be safe with 4 crates worth.
I'll have my men take everything topside. You should take the elevator up to the surface, too. I assume you didn't walk here from the station, so you'd better call your ride over. And from now on, use that elevator whenever you come here.
Swarford thanks the agent and turns to lead his team up to the surface, coming out of the elevator into a small shack much like Silo Alpha's. Not too long later, the heavy wheels of the convoy grind to a halt to meet them in front of the shack, where the Secret Service agents soon follow, dragging out the 4 crates of gold, and then continuing to drag out more crates. With the extra cargo and extra passengers, it takes a second trip to get everyone and everything on the train, prompting Swarford to radio for more transport to be ready on the other end. But once loaded up, the train sets out with no further issues, not stopping once along the way, not to inspect the inhuman roars echoing through the forest, not to look at the charred piles of rubbles and ash that was once a prosperous radio tower and ski resort. Perhaps a representation of the country itself, or perhaps a representation of things yet to come. By the time the train reaches the train yard, night is already falling, and when the group finally comes to a stop at the base, the last traces of light have been swallowed by the horizon. The group dismounts and the agents remove the crates from the vehicles, following Swarford through the service entrance to the bunker. After much effort opening up the heavy metal door leading to the production wing, the agents drop the precious crates in the safety of the bunker's walls. The door closes behind the group with much less effort, sealing off the outside world. But before Swarford can begin to give any more commands, Harper bursts into the room.
Took you long enough, we've been waiting.
What? Why?
New orders from command. Some asset they want secured. Seems they want it bad. They're even calling Site R to help us.
And what exactly is this asset?
Don't know. Said we'd be debriefed when we get there. Until then, we only have the location name. Mount Weather.
I see them all right. A lot of them, too. Good equipment, good setup. But they still haven't noticed me yet. And I intend to keep it that way. Knight Moreno out.